The silent threshold, Admiral Kryn, stood music before the observation. Window of the battle cruiser ascendant. Dawn watching the swirling colors of hyperspace fade into the darkness of normal space. Behind him the bridge. Crew of the Valyrian Empire's 13th Expeditionary Fleet worked in tents. Silence, 300 vessels had just completed the jump into what the galaxy called the Dead Zone, the region of space controlled by humans. The Admiral's scales rippled with unease. He was a veteran of 40 campaigns across 24 worlds. But this mission felt different. Over the past 3 centuries, 12 fleets from various civilizations had entered human space. Not one had returned, not a single ship, not even a distress signal. Just absolute silence, as if they had been erased from existence. The Valyrian High Command believed they had finally solved the mystery. The humans must possess a doomsday weapon, something left by the ancient ones who had seeded the galaxy millions of years ago. It was the only logical explanation. How else could a species barely 200 years into space travel destroy entire armadas? Kryn had studied everything known about humans. They were physically unremarkable, standing shorter than most spacefaring races. Their technology was adequate but not exceptional. Their ships were fast but poorly armed. Compared to Valyrian standards, their worlds were spread thin across this sector with small populations and limited industrial capacity. On paper, they should have been easy to conquer. Yet 12 fleets had vanished. Admiral all ships reporting successful jump, announced Commander Thale. His second command sensors are online. Beginning deep space scan. Kryn nodded. Proceed with caution. Full sensor sweeps. I want to know about every asteroid, every satellite, every piece of debris in this system. The fleet had jumped into the outer edges of a system humans called New Horizon. Intelligence suggested it was a minor colony world with perhaps 2 million inhabitants. It should have been defended by orbital platforms and patrol ships. It should have been scrambling fighters and broadcasting warnings. Instead, there was nothing. Sir, I'm detecting orbital structures around the 4th planet, reported the sensor officer, but they're not active. No power signatures, no life signs. They appear to be abandoned. Kryn moved closer to the tactical display. Show me. The hologram zoomed in on 3 massive defense platforms orbiting a greenish-blue planet. They were impressive structures bristling with weapon emplacements and shield generators, but every system was dark, cold, lifeless. How long have they been inactive? Kryn asked. Difficult to determine precisely, but based on decay rates and micro debris accumulation, I'd estimate at least 50 years, possibly longer. 50 years that match the time frame of the 9th Fleet's disappearance. Had these platforms destroyed that fleet, then been abandoned? But why would the humans leave such valuable defensive assets unmanned? Sir, we're detecting a single vessel approaching, Tile announced. Small craft, possibly a scout or courier ship. It's broadcasting on standard frequencies. Let me hear it. A human voice filled the bridge, speaking in galactic common with a strange accent. Valyrian fleet, you have entered human territory. This space is restricted. For your own safety, turn back immediately. This is not a threat. This is not a warning. This is advice. Turn back while you still can. The bridge crew exchanged glances. A single small ship advising a fleet of 300 warships to retreat. It would have been laughable if not for the 12 missing fleets. Open a channel. Ordered channel open. Admiral Human. Vessel, this is Admiral Kren of the Valyrian Imperial Fleet. We have come to investigate the disappearance of previous expeditions and to establish contact with your government. We mean no harm, but we will defend ourselves if threatened. Identify yourself and state your intentions. There was a pause, then the voice returned, and now Kren could detect something in it. Not fear, not anger, something else. Sadness, perhaps. Admiral Kren, my name is Captain Sarah Chin of the human scout ship Wanderer. I'm an independent contractor, not military. I'm out here because someone needs to try to warn ships like yours. I've been doing this for 20 years, 20 years of watching fleets arrive, watching them refuse to listen, and watching them disappear. I'm tired, Admiral, so very tired of this, watching them disappear. Kren leaned forward. You know what happened to them? Of course I know. Everyone in human space knows. It's not a secret, Admiral. We don't have super weapons. We don't have ancient technology. We don't have anything special at all. That's what makes it so tragic. Then what happened to 12 entire fleets? Another pause. Kren could almost feel the weight of whatever the human was about to say. They met us, Admiral. They met humans. And they made the same mistake every species makes. They assume that because we're weaker, because we have fewer ships, because our technology isn't as advanced, that we would surrender when faced with overwhelming force. They forgot to ask the one question that matters. And what question is that? What are humans willing to sacrifice to remain free? Before Kren could respond, his tactical officer called out, Sir, the human ship is leaving. It's jumping to hyperspace. Should we pursue? Kren stared at the space where the small vessel had been. No, let it go. Set course for the 4th planet. We need to investigate those abandoned platforms and prepare boarding teams. I want to know what happened there. As the fleet moved forward, Kren couldn't shake the feeling that he was missing something crucial, something that every other admiral before him had also missed. The human's words echoed in his mind. What are humans willing to sacrifice? He had conquered many species. He had seen surrender, seen desperation, seen last stands that were brave but ultimately futile. But something about the way that human had spoken suggested this was different. There was a certainty in her voice, a resignation to what she knew would happen. The Ascendant Dawn approached the dead platforms. Kren ordered visual scans. The structures were massive, easily capable of housing thousands of personnel. Their weapon systems were outdated by Valyrian standards, but still formidable. Yet they floated in silence, tombs in the void. Admiral, we're detecting debris fields between here and the inner planets, the sensor officer reported. Massive amounts of debris, ship fragments, weapons, hull plating. The composition matches several of the missing fleets. Kren's blood ran cold. How many ships? Impossible to determine exactly, but based on the volume and variety of debris, at least several hundred vessels from multiple species. This entire system is a graveyard, sir. 300 ships, perhaps more, all destroyed. But where were the human ships? Where were the signs of human losses? Humans couldn't have won such battles without casualties, unless they had suffered casualties, unless they had sacrificed everything. Sir, I'm picking up power signatures on the planets. Surface, the communication officer announced. Multiple sources spread. Across 3 continents, they appear to be settlements, but I'm detecting no military installations, no defense networks, just civilian populations. How many? Approximately 2 million, as intelligence predicted, but sir, there's something odd. I'm detecting very few adults of military age, mostly children, elderly, and a small number of younger adults. Kren felt a chill run down his spine. Where are the others? No one answered, because the answer was suddenly horribly obvious. The others were gone. The others had died fighting. The humans had thrown everything they had at the invading fleets, sacrificing their defense platforms, their ships, and their people to stop the invasions. And they had succeeded, but at what cost? Admiral, we're receiving another transmission from the planet, Tile said. Quietly. Play it. This time the voice was different, older female with the weight of years in every word. Valerian Fleet, this is Governor Alina Rodriguez of New Horizon Colony. I'm 93 years old. I was 16 when the last fleet came here. The Krenth Collective. I watched my parents, my 3 brothers, my friends, everyone I knew in my generation, go into space to fight them. Only 70 people from our entire defense force survived. We lost 8,000. The Krenth lost every ship. I've spent my entire life rebuilding what was destroyed, raising the children who were orphaned, teaching them about the sacrifice their parents made, and now you're here and it's going to happen all over again. So I'm asking you, Admiral, begging you, please turn back. Don't make us do this again. Don't make our children fight. Don't make them sacrifice everything, please. The bridge was absolutely silent. Every officer stared at their stations, unwilling to meet each other's eyes. Kren realized his hands were shaking. Sir, what are your orders? They asked softly. Kren thought about his own children back on the Valerian home world. He thought about the 12 fleets that had come before him. He thought about the human woman who had spent 20 years trying to warn people, knowing they wouldn't listen. He thought about what he would do if someone invaded his home, threatened his children, demanded his surrender, and he finally understood the unbreakable spirit. Admiral Kren stood motionless, staring at the communications console as if it were a weapon pointed at his heart. Governor Rodriguez's words hung in the air like a curse. The bridge crew waited for his orders, but he found himself unable to speak. Commander Thiel moved closer, speaking quietly. Admiral, the fleet is awaiting your command. Should we proceed with the occupation plan? Kren forced himself to focus. He was a soldier. He had his orders. The Valerian High Command expected him to secure this system, to establish a foothold in human territory, and to discover what happened to the previous fleets. He had 300 ships and overwhelming firepower. 2 million civilians on that planet couldn't stop him, except they could. They had stopped 12 other fleets. Sir prompted again. Maintain position, Kren said finally. I need to think. He walked away from his crew, moving to the observation window. The planet below looked peaceful, green and blue with swirling white clouds. It looked like any of 100 worlds he had seen. Nothing special, nothing threatening, but he knew better now. That planet was a fortress not built of metal and energy shields, but of something far more dangerous: human determination, human willingness to sacrifice, human refusal to surrender. His tactical officer called out, "Admiral, I'm completing the analysis of the debris fields. The pattern is unusual. The wreckage from the alien fleets is concentrated in defensive perimeters around the planet and the abandoned platforms, but I'm also detecting fragments of human ships and stations mixed throughout. Based on the debris volume, the humans lost at least 80% of their forces in the last major engagement. 80%. Kren tried to imagine losing 80% of his fleet and continuing to fight. It was unthinkable. Any rational species would surrender long before such losses. But the humans had fought until the invaders were destroyed. Regardless of the cost. What about the platforms we detected? Why were they abandoned? Analyzing now, sir. The officer worked for several minutes. Sir, I believe I understand. The platforms weren't abandoned by choice. They were deliberately shut down. Power cores were removed. Weapon systems were dismantled. Everything useful was stripped out, probably to be used elsewhere. The humans weren't running away. They were consolidating resources, concentrating their remaining strength. But why leave the platforms intact at all? Why not destroy them completely, perhaps as a warning, suggested Thale, a reminder to any fleet that enters this space. These platforms once housed thousands of defenders who died stopping an invasion. Their monuments now graves. Kren felt sick. He had seen war monuments before. On dozens of worlds, statues of heroes, eternal flames, carved names of the fallen, but those were always created after victory, after peace was secured. The humans had left their monuments while the war was still ongoing, knowing more battles would come, knowing more people would die. Sir, the human governor is hailing us again, the communications officer announced. Put it through. Governor Rodriguez's voice returned steadier now. Admiral Kren, I assume you're analyzing the debris fields and trying to understand what happened. Let me save you some time. 51 years ago, the Krenth Collective sent 400 ships to take our world. They thought it would be easy. We had 32 defense platforms and 94 ships. We were outgunned 5-1. They demanded surrender. We refused. The battle lasted 9 days. At the end, 0 Krenth ships escaped. We lost all our platforms and 88 of our ships. 8,000 defenders died. The Krenth lost over 60,000 crew members. There was no winner, Admiral. Only survivors, and we've been rebuilding ever since, knowing that someday someone else would come, and here you are, Governor, Kren said carefully. I understand your history. I understand your losses, but I have my orders. My government wants answers about the missing fleets. They want to establish diplomatic contact with humanity. We don't have to fight. There can be another way. There was a long silence. Then Rodriguez spoke, and her voice was filled with an exhaustion that went beyond mere age. Admiral, do you have children? The question caught Kren off guard. Yes, 2 sons. I had 3 daughters and 2 sons, all dead now. Died in various skirmishes over the years. I have 12 grandchildren living on this planet, 27 great-grandchildren, and do you know what I teach them, Admiral? I teach them that freedom is not negotiable. I teach them that some things are worth dying for. I teach them that surrender is not an option, not ever, because once you surrender once, you'll surrender again and again until you forget what it means to be free. But surely there's a middle ground. Negotiation, compromise. You want to Establish diplomatic contact, then send. Diplomats, not warships, you want. Answers about the missing fleets, I just gave them to you. They came with guns. And demands. They met people who refused to submit. Mathematics did the rest. And you, Admiral, you brought 300 ships to a world of 2 million civilians. What kind of diplomatic message does that send? Kren had no answer to that, sir. His tactical officer interrupted. I'm detecting movement on the planet's surface, multiple launches there, sending up shuttles and transport vessels armed. Kren asked tensely. Negative, sir. These appear to be civilian craft. They're not heading toward us. They're moving to the outer moons and the asteroid belt. Wait, I'm also detecting power surges from some of the settlements. They're activating emergency protocols, moving people into shelters. They're evacuating. They'll observed. They're preparing for war. Rodriguez's voice came through again. I'm evacuating the children, Admiral. The young ones, the elderly, the injured. We're sending them away from the planet, away from the battle zone. It'll take 12 hours to get them all to safety. After that, the remaining population will prepare to resist. We have about 400,000 people of fighting age left on this planet. Most of them aren't soldiers. They're farmers, teachers, engineers, artists, but every single one of them knows how to fight. Because we've been preparing for this day since birth. They'll use hunting rifles and mining explosives and whatever else they can make. They'll fight from every building, every tunnel, every crater. They'll make you pay for every meter of ground, and when it's over, you'll have your conquest. You'll rule over ruins and graves. Is that what your empire wants, Admiral? Is that worth it? Kren turned to look at his bridge crew, young officers, veterans, people with families back home. He thought about sending them down to that planet to fight civilians. He thought about the reports he would have to write, the casualty lists, the explanations to grieving families. He thought about his own sons and what he would do if someone invaded his home world. Governor Rodriguez, he said slowly, tell me something. In 300 years, 12 fleets have come here and surrounding human systems. None returned. How many humans have died in those battles? Oh, 2 million. The number hit Kren like a physical blow. 2 million dead, an entire planet's population wiped out over centuries of endless fighting. And how many of you are left in all of human space? Approximately 400 million across 23 colony worlds. We were never numerous, Admiral. We spread out fast, settled many worlds, but kept our population small. We're not a military power. We're not conquerors. We just want to be left alone. But every generation someone comes, someone who thinks we'll be easy prey, and every generation we prove them wrong. We're dying out, Admiral, slowly but surely. Another few invasions like the one you're planning, and there won't be enough of us left to maintain our civilization. Will collapse, and in the end, what will you have gained? Dead worlds and the knowledge that you destroyed a species that only wanted to be free. Kren closed his 4 eyes. He thought about glory, about valor and expansion, about following orders. Then he thought about right and wrong, about necessity and waste, about the difference between winning and victory. Governor, I'm going to ask you a question, and I need an honest answer. If I turn my fleet around right now and leave, will you report this encounter to your government? Of course, every human World knows about every contact with potential hostile forces we share. Information, it's how we survive, and what will they do with that information? They'll prepare, they'll expect you to come back with more ships, they'll ready their defenses, they'll say goodbye to their children one more time and prepare to die defending their homes, same as always. And if I approach without weapons, if I send a single ship with actual diplomats, people authorized to negotiate trade agreements and peaceful coexistence, there was a very long pause that Rodriguez said finally would be something new. In 300 years, no one has ever tried that. Everyone assumes we're hostile because we fight, but we only fight because we're attacked. We've been waiting for someone to simply ask, instead of demand, if you did that. Admiral, if you actually came in peace, I think you'd find humans can be quite reasonable. Kren made his decision. Fleet Command, this is Admiral Kren. All ships prepare to jump. We're leaving this system immediately. Set course for Valerie in space. His bridge erupted in confusion. Sir, they stepped forward. Our orders were to investigate and make contact. I've done both. I've learned what happened to the previous fleets. I've made contact with human authorities and I'm reporting back. That military conquest of human space is impossible, not difficult, impossible. They'll fight until the last human is dead and they'll take us with them. It's mutual annihilation. That's what the High Command needs to know. But sir, they'll court-martial you for retreating without engaging, perhaps, or perhaps they'll realize I've saved them from the greatest military disaster in Valerian history. Either way, I'm not sacrificing this fleet and those people down there for nothing. Prepare for jump. Before the fleet could execute the order, Rodriguez's voice came one last time. Admiral Kren, I'm 93 years old. I've spent my entire life expecting to die in battle. I raised my children knowing I'd probably never see them grow old. I've attended more funerals than birthday parties, and in all that time, I never thought I'd hear an alien commander choose life over glory. You've given me something I thought I'd never have. Oh, thank you, Admiral. Thank you for choosing wisdom. If you return with diplomats, we'll receive them. We'll negotiate. We'll find a way to coexist. That's all we ever wanted. Kren felt something unusual. Relief, pure, overwhelming relief. You're welcome. Governor, take care of those children. Raise them well, and maybe, just maybe, teach them they won't have to fight. After all, the fleet jumped to hyperspace, leaving the graveyard system behind. 3 weeks later, Admiral Kren stood before the Valerian High Council. He presented his findings: video evidence of the debris fields, recordings of his conversations with the humans, analysis of the previous battles, and his conclusion: humanity cannot be conquered by force. Every attempt will result in catastrophic losses for the attacker and the near extinction of human populations, but they can be negotiated with. They want peace, they want trade, they simply refuse to be subjugated. I recommend we establish formal diplomatic relations and treaty negotiations. The council debated for hours. Some called him a coward, others called him a pragmatist. In the end, they voted to accept his recommendation. 6 months later, the first Valerian diplomatic mission arrived at New Horizon. They came in a single unarmed ship. They were greeted with caution but also with genuine hospitality. Trade agreements were Signed cultural exchanges were arranged, borders were established and respected. Admiral Kren, though demoted for his unauthorized retreat, was later quietly promoted again and given accommodation for preventing a war that would have destroyed both civilizations. And Governor Elena Rodriguez lived to see her great-great-grandchildren grow up in peace, never having to learn how to fight, never having to say goodbye to their parents one final time before battle. She died at age 107, surrounded by 5 generations of family in a world that had finally learned to be something other than a battlefield. The mystery of the 12 lost fleets was solved. They had met an enemy that couldn't be defeated because it refused to accept defeat. They had encountered the one force in the universe stronger than any weapon, the unbreakable human spirit, and Admiral Kren was the first to understand that some victories can only be won by choosing not to